Step into the shadows with Velvet Bite as we unearth the mystic and ancient origins of Halloween.
Well, here we are once again on Velvet Bite Radio, and it is October the 2nd. It is the month of Halloween, which I know many of you in my audience love Halloween, and it's many people's favorite months, but of course, we know that there's a history to Halloween far beyond the consumeristic rendition that we celebrate today. We got it, we know it, and we're going to discuss it here today, of course. Hey, Jonocide and Incognito are in the room. Welcome to the show, of course, once again. I know you guys are subscribed, but for any, I'm going to talk for a little bit. We'll wait for some people to stream in. And because, sometimes it takes YouTube a little bit of time to tell people, hey, this stream is running live. Come show up and talk about Halloween. And I know this is a super magical time of the year for a lot of people where they feel like the veil is thinnest. Hello, Mrs. Jonocide. Hi, Renee. We got it all going on. Now, this is going to be an interesting show because there's a lot of people I also know who think Halloween is of the devil. And then they spew out a lot of Christian propaganda that goes way back. And we'll talk about that. I have a lot of video clips here. We're going to go through this. And the person that I'm using as my guide, I'm going to show you guys an article that I wrote on him. I found a documentary with him in it. It's one of the few documentaries that actually has this man in it. And he is a poet and a university teacher and a Wiccan named Robin Skelton. And I found a documentary where he was talking about the origins of Halloween. So we are going to let him navigate the way, and we're going to look at some TikTok videos, and we're going to talk about these concepts of Halloween, which of course we know as Samhain. And we're going to be mostly, of course, talking about it in the context of the United Kingdom. That kind of Celtic culture. Maybe it's also in some Northern European cultures in France and Gaul, in that area like that. But we're not going to really get into the Roman kind of paganism that existed. We're not going to go deep into that. This has to do with a lot of the Druidic practices. And of course, it's infamous for human sacrifice, stuff like that. And we have Matthew Lee Embleton in the room, who is from London. And I want to actually do a promotion for Matthew because he's done an explicit study on the tarot card deck. And you can find him on TikTok. He has a lot of mini videos explaining different concepts of the tarot. And he also has a book out, I believe. It's either out or it's coming out on the tarot. You can look him up, Matthew Lee Embleton. I'll actually maybe pop up one of his videos that he's done on the tarot on TikTok. I'll probably pop it up while we're talking. So check out his book, check out his videos on TikTok because they're quite interesting. And he's coming all the way from the UK. That means it's like 1:00 in the morning there. So he's saying good morning. We like 2, 3 in the morning, wee hours of the morning. So check out Matthew's stuff. I think you'll find it interesting. And in terms of this, our biggest source is going to be this documentary, which features Robin Skelton. Now, Robin Skelton is originally born in Easington, Yorkshire, England. He studied at the University of Leeds in Cambridge, and then he served in the Royal Air Force. He crossed the Atlantic and came to British Columbia in Victoria, Canada in 1963. And that's when he became a professor at the University of Victoria and began to study witchcraft and eventually practicing Wiccan. Now, Wiccan, of course, is a modern religion. It's a modern pagan religion. They pull from a lot of different religions, including Druidic stuff, probably different practices from history that's been recorded down, and maybe even Egyptian stuff and Roman stuff, but it's quite modern. Hello, John Connor. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate everybody who comes to the stream. But this guy's going to be our reference. He was quite an eloquent man. And this documentary that I found was from 1995 or 96. So he died shortly after, appearing in this documentary. But he gives a lot of good information about the history of Halloween. And of course, most of us in America or Canada who have been celebrating it since we're kids know it as a time where you get dressed as something spooky or a costume and you go out and you get as much candy as you can and you gobble that stuff up and you get cavities and you get sick to your stomach. And yeah, very commercial, very removed. And I say this all the time on my streams about our culture is we're very commercial and we're very removed from that spiritual world. I did a stream yesterday talking about who's in control of our spiritual reality and our supernatural perceptions, and we're so removed from it now. We think of ourselves as separate from the planet rather than that we coexist or we are sprung forth from the planet. It's like an apple thinking it's independent of the tree. It falls off the tree and it's like, what's that tree? I never came from that tree, and it's like, I want to conquer that tree. Right. So it's very much this concept we have with this sort of, I don't know, maybe it happened in Enlightenment when the goal became to, seek out the secrets of the world and conquer it for the betterment of human, but we've seemed to have separated ourselves. And the thing about these pagans that we're going to review and how, you hear Christians judge them so harsh, they were deeply affected by the planet. They deeply observed all of the cycles, all of the solstices, the seasons, and they were deeply affected by it. They couldn't be like me. If I'm tired one day, I just sit it out. I might sleep and I get away with it. They couldn't sleep or sit it out. They had to get out there and till the farms and do everything. Otherwise, the whole village could, essentially starve to death. Like they had to be aware of all of these seasons. They were so controlled, instructed, and a part of it. And this becomes really apparent when you get into these Celtic religions. And it's something that goes right over most Christian nationalists' head. They just see demon and evil and sacrifice, and they don't really understand the intricacies of this. So we are going to be letting Monsieur Robin Skelton lead the way. I'm actually going to give you guys the link to the article. Remember, if you're not on Substack, you can subscribe there. I'll put the link to this article there. All the stuff that I put on there is available free for people, unless it's a special for paid, but it's there for 4 months and then it will go into an archive. So this should still be there free for everybody. I've put it up in the stream and you can check that article out on Robin Skelton. There's a poem of his at the end, and I will also link this documentary, the full documentary that I'm using stuff from. I'll pop it up in the links in a bit when I find it, when we're watching one of the clips. But with that said, let's go back to our full screen. Big hello, everybody. With that said, we're going to start out with where Halloween started. And I'm going to let a clip of Robin Skelton kind of lead the way for us, and then we can have a kind of conversation about it. So let's let Robin tell you where it started. Let's do it. And before I put this, I apologize. Turn your volume up a little bit. There might be some volume issues. This documentary is from 1996, and I put it in my system, and I tried to clear out as much static, increase the volume as much as I could, but it was really hard. It is a lower quality documentary because of when it was recorded, and it's probably been uploaded and re-uploaded many times, but it's good. It has a lot of good content in it. So you might have to nudge your volume up a little bit. Here we go.
Halloween began, we think, in the middle of Asia, like almost everything begins, well, sometimes supposes, with a festival which celebrates the equinox, celebrates the end of the summer and the gathering period, the beginning of real winter. And when this happens, you've got to do something about it. It's a dramatic moment, so you've got to do something. So you have a fire. The first thing you do is you have a fire, because this celebrates the burning of the old and the coming again of the sun eventually. And you have a dance, because a dance expresses the movement of the earth, the movement of the seasons, the way things move and shift and change. It's an active thing. And this really is sort of the basis of what we now call Halloween.
Okay, so he's talking about the basics, the foundation of it, and he's calling it Halloween. And of course, we know in the United Kingdom it was known as Samhain, which is Samhain. And there's probably different names for it in different areas. We're going to go with Samhain because we are dealing with United Kingdom, Ireland, Wales, Scotland, places like that existed long before the Roman Empire trotted their way in there, and then they got invaded by all these different, the Saxons and whatever. We're going way back to a time where there was no written language. John says he looks like Jerry Garcia. He does, but he was a brilliant man. He was really intelligent, and he was a professor at UVic, which actually my son attended UVic for a year. I actually attended the college near UVic, and I was going to transfer, but that my life took a different path. So the city that he's in, actually, I have one of his books right here. The city, he's talking about Halloween in the basis of it. The crux is this warm period of life is ending. The start of winter. Fall is a transitionary period into winter, and you're sort of observing everything that's happening, that the leaves are falling, things are dying. And that can be pretty scary and frightening if you are directly affected by the seasons and you've just come out of a bountiful season of summer where things are lush, berries are on the tree, leaves, it's warm, it's easier going. You don't have to light a fire and struggle through the cold. And then once you see this change, you know that the cold and dark winter nights are coming, and you don't have electricity, you don't have running plumbing, you don't have central heating, you have no car, you have very little of those things. You have some technologies, maybe a sword, or you might have some tools. Obviously they created Stonehenge and Avebury and all those things, so they obviously had some technology, but it's not like today. And so they are responding to the natural world that they're so closely tied to, and they're creating this rituals, of course, where he talks about how you're dancing, and then of course they have to get the last of the crops, and they may eventually know, because the crops are dying and there's not going to be anything to feed the animals. Now you have to slaughter some of your older animals, to preserve for the other. That's part of the sacrifice. And I think that movies look, when you go and see movies like The Wicker Man, it's a horror movie. So over exaggerated. Yeah, like Jonasai said, the harvest happens. But The Wicker Man's over exaggerated, and it looks more like a crazy modern cult than what was actually happening. And they'll get into this. We'll show some of the rituals they did. Nobody is denying that there was human sacrifice in those days. And I'm not saying, hey, let's bring that back. I'm saying that, I'm going to actually argue with you that we actually sacrifice people in abundance way more than they did. It's this thing called the war machine. And I was just listening to this rabbi person talking like a lunatic, saying Americans need to sacrifice their blood basically for Israel. So she was talking about a total ritual sacrifice way. So I argue we do sacrifice. We just do it in a very different way. We do shed blood for the future. We just do it very different. So there you have it. Harvest is coming. Weather's getting cold. We have people who are deeply, deeply affected by this. And so what also is part of that is that Halloween, Samhain, this time of the year, things are dying. That means the dead are near. It's a divination time, it's a ghost time, it's a magical time. It's a time where things are more quiet and you have time to sit back. Maybe you're hibernating like a bear. You have time to sit back and get messages from the beyond. And so the second clip that we're going to talk about goes into the ghost time. Maybe that's why we dress up. There's dancing, there's partying, there's people trying to do movement and emulate the movement of the seasons of energy. And then we have ghosts. We have ghosts, not Casper the ghost, but the ghosts of your ancestors, things from beyond. They didn't believe in a heaven and hell. They believed in a spiritual world that was right tied with them. That's what they believed in. And when I was talking yesterday about who controls our supernatural world, clearly these institutions have controlled it for a long time, because we used to believe it was right there with us all the time. Now, if we even believe it at all, we think of it as heaven and hell and damnation, and I have to change my behavior for some certain reason to get into that place. But let's look at this, where we go into the sort of ghosty time of the year.
Well, Halloween is ghost time because it is the end of the year, end of one year, and the beginning of the next. The Feast of Halloween, the Feast of Samhain, is the end of the year festival and the beginning of the year festival. It's also the Feast of the Dead because the year has ended. You see, the year is now dead. And it's a time when it's believed that the ghosts of the people who have died during the year, but also others, can come back and pay a visit, see how things are doing, see how things are going on. And once you take the perspective that the dead and the living are together, you are saying something about death which is very important. You're saying death is a gateway. It is not the end. It is a gateway. You die if you're a tree or a piece of grass, or you die, but you come back. We don't know quite when or as what. But witches and many, many religions, this is not just witchcraft or Western paganism. They believe that life continues. If it continues for vegetables, why shouldn't it continue for us? It's a time of communication between the dead and the living, between the imagined and the actual. Broken apart, but anything can go.
Okay, so again, they're observing the world. The trees die and then they come back. So that means death and the living are side by side. They're not separated. They're bound together. It's just a process, a gateway. The leaves die and fade and they come back. They're watching this happen around them. They're observing the world around them, and they see reincarnation right within the trees, within the greenery. Things die and then it comes back again. It dies and it comes back again. And I want to let you guys know, I should have gotten a picture of this before I started. They're doing this documentary, and it's done in Vancouver, British Columbia. And that you see all this sort of festivals and people dressed in costume. They had this event called the Parade of Lost Souls. And it was an actual community event that was created because people in North America are so disconnected from their heritage and their European heritage. And they were curating this festival in Vancouver as a way to reconnect with their ancestors and get these old traditions back. I actually attended it, before my son was born, probably 2002 or 3, something like that. And we went over and we did the Parade of Lost Souls. And what they do is you show up dressed in your costume, and they parade you through all these community streets, and then you end up in a field all together. There's like thousands of people, and then they're doing all these sort of pagan performances and songs and dance and fire stuff. It was really cool. And I'm not sure if they're still running it. I think it's become too corporate now. I think, like everything happens, I think it got too political, but they tried, and it was a really fascinating festival, and that features in this. And so you hear him talking about ghosts, and that's why this is like the time. This is the time where death is really close because things are dying. It's really simple when you actually think about how they think. And the way that we operate now would be so foreign to them. And so I think it must have been shocking for them to be accused of all these horrible things when the Roman Empire came in, because the way they're looking at it, okay, so we're sacrificing this stuff, but it comes back, because everything that dies comes back. And they're doing this based on observing plants, trees, grass, things like that. Basic nature. So of course, the Roman Empire eventually does come in there. And look, Christianity is pretty much, I'm ABCing it right here, but it's pretty much the Roman Empire turned into the Catholic Church. So when that becomes really prevalent, and Constantine declares that he's suddenly Christian, this becomes the mainstream. They gather at the Council of Nicaea, and they figure out how things are going to be and what's going to be the rules. And of course, it's not the original Christianity of Jesus, not even close. But then it's slow at first. It's actually really passive how they're trying to infiltrate, and they do tell people, like, you can't sacrifice, you can't do this, and they slowly try to infiltrate that. And this next clip, he's talking about that. They generally talk about how they try to turn a lot of these Samhain celebrations into, Hallows Eve or a Feast of Saints, things like that. And that was the first. Did Romans sacrifice people? Oh, and they put them on crosses. So they had their ways of dealing with criminals. They just, it's their judgment that the way that these people did, because most of the people to sacrifice were criminals. Romans put people on crosses. So it's a good point. That's a good point. But we're going to get into this, how they start infiltrating. So you've got all these traditions about worshiping nature and the equinox and the change and the shift, and how these people are dually tied to the land and the seasons in a way that we probably will never understand in our modern world. And I think the Romans didn't really understand it. Sure, the Romans were affected, but they're from a warmer climate. And the Romans have a totally different technology. They have a pantheon of different gods. And now they've converted to Christianity. And they're just like, no, they're the massive empire that wants to take over everything. So they have to have some consistency, some control over how people think, over how people see things. And I mean, as you know, Christianity can't see that we live amongst the dead and there's a gateway. They have to control it. They have to make you terrified of what's going to happen when you die, not feel like you are one with the planet and you're just going to be recycled, or you are always there with the supernatural. And that's the difference. And that's what a lot of, you get Christians today, it's like they believe in the spirit world, they believe in this, they're evil and they're of the devil. That is old propaganda, because you just have a different way of viewing life. And it's almost a waste of time to waste your breath on that. But we're going to go into this part 3 where they talk about the Feast of All Saints. And it's kind of a passive way of infiltration. You see propagandists do passive kind of things today. So let's check it out.
It really wasn't called Halloween, of course, for a long time. It was just the festival of the period. And it became called Halloween because the Christian church, I should say, decided that we couldn't have this pagan stuff going on everywhere. They got to do something about that. So they pinched the festival, which they did for Easter as well, and Christmas as well. So they pinched it and decided that there should be a feast of All Hallows, of All Saints, all the great saints of the past. And they hoped this would cancel out the pagan festivity. It didn't. Of course, pagans went on doing it. But it's called All Hallows because of this, you see, at the eve of All Hallows.
Okay, that was the hostess of the, I think, was she walking at, I don't know if she was walking at Stonehenge or not. I've actually been to Stonehenge. I should have popped up some of my pictures of when I was at Stonehenge. I would like to go back and go to Avebury, but who knows, with all the crazy stuff in the world happening, who knows when that will happen. But as you can see, they're pinching it. They're putting their saints. They're calling their gods and goddesses saints. So like the saint, they might have had a goddess named Brigid. They'll call it Saint Bridget. That they'll sort of take control of that narrative. And that's the first step. That's only the first step. Then they've got to villainize pagans. They've got to make pagans look like and probably exaggerate the executions. Like you said, Jonocide said, like Romans did sacrifice people. Yeah, they put them on crosses. These guys put them in wicker cages. Maybe they burnt them and did some stuff trying to keep, they believe that the offerings help things go, but Romans stuck people on crosses. And we send people to war to sacrifice their lives, and our government institutions whack people left, right, and center. So it's not like death has left the stage in any form whatsoever. So let's go into some villainizing of paganism and how the Christian, I'm going to call them Romans because they're very Roman still. This Roman Empire, this Christian Empire is deciding that, people are not stopping the things that they're doing. They're still doing it. So now it's step 2.
Halloween became associated with witchcraft, and October 31st was known as the Great Witch Night. The night witches came together to celebrate their Sabbath. The image of the witch riding her broomstick to the gathering became the most important symbol of Halloween.
The image of the witch and the broomstick occurs to one at Samhain. There's a point. First of all, the broom in the old days was a way of hiding a wand, because the special carving on the end of a magic wand which you use for your spell making was often phallic and therefore a bit rude. So you put twins around it and turned it into a broom. That was one reason for the broomstick, and everybody had a broom. So you would go out with your brooms to the field, and you would dance around the field, astride the broomsticks, because you would be astride a particular important image, an image in fact in fertility. And this helped corn to grow, or whatever else to grow. So it was a ritual dance. Now, they didn't actually fly, but they probably danced fairly high.
Okay, so you see them, that's one of the villainizations that they began to do. That they, instead of starting to infiltrate and absorb the religion, they just made up like, oh, they're dancing in the field. That's because that's their witches, that's their wand. They literally made up crap about people. And a lot of these people, the religion had fallen and Christianity was there to stay. A lot of them were probably identifying as Christians, even when the witch and burning, most of them were hung. A lot of them were identifying as Christians, but they still had these traditions from their ancestors carried on, through orality. Nothing was written in Druid in those pagan times. There was very little written language. It was just orality and passed on traditions. And that's why they scramble us and move us around today. They don't want us to have these traditions. They want us to stick to this solid narrative that they choose, and they delete and they rewrite anytime. And we have no tie to that supernatural world. And so when I hear Christians go on about that they're all evil and they're all demons, that's just old propaganda that's been buried into their minds about what they were doing. As if they live in an innocent world where they don't kill anybody. I mean, burning a witch could be considered a sacrifice to their whatever crazy one god that's authoritarian. It could very much well be considered that. So there's a lot more villainization that goes on when it comes to paganism and the stuff that they did. I'll link you that documentary, like I said, and you guys can check it out. Let's go on to some traditions. We're going to talk about traditions that stuck, traditions that we still do today, things that they symbolize and what they mean. Let me see if I can find this. Check it out.
sorts of things happened quite naturally. Pumpkins. Pumpkins are fun. But now on Halloween, we put candles in the pumpkins and stick them out on our front porches. This is great, and they have funny expressions on them. And they have two effects, you see, or supposed to have two effects. One is to frighten people a little bit, because they look sort of vaguely fiendish and off-putting, you know. Another one is to give light. When you get into the dark portion of the year, you want more light, more light. Originally, they were used to say to people, look, something's going on here. Keep away. The witches, the pagans, members of the old religion, would stick them on top of sticks and carry them in procession. And they'd go to a field, and they'd dance around the field, which helps the crops to grow, but it also was a festival of light around the field. That's where our pumpkins come from. Well, the black cat is an odd one, really. And I think the reason that it's so powerful is, first of all, it's nocturnal, which is, for most people, a bit distressing. Secondly, it's absolutely and totally really untamable. A cat looks after itself. I think cats are mysterious to people.
In the Middle Ages, people believed witches could transform them.
So there you go. She starts talking about how witches would transform themselves. So these creatures that they just think are mysterious or are a part of nature, and they represent something. You know, like spiders with their 8 legs, they represent some of these equinoxes and celebrations that they have. Or bats or cats, they're more mysterious. They're not like a dog. You start seeing these propagandists who want to get rid of these old traditions and want more control, more money, more power, more influence. They start taking everything that's a part of a religion and inverting it into propaganda, that this means they're a witch, that means they're a witch. They've got a broom, they've got a cat. Oh, they've got a pot that they cook. That's the witch's cauldron. Like as if everybody had a cast iron pot to cook in. Like, yeah, that was just part of survival in those days. They were taking everything that they did and trying to convert it into something a little bit more suspicious than it actually really was. This is propaganda. We see this today all over the place. Propaganda nonstop in our world. So the Roman Empire, they're doing it today, and they did it back in those days as well. So those are some of the traditions. Now, got some more symbolization. When I was talking about the spider and how it symbolizes things for witches, we are going to talk about that a little bit more. Check out some more.
There are other ones, there are other symbols that turn up too, and some of which have a long history people don't realize. The spider, for example, not only making its web, which is mysterious enough, but it has 8 legs, right? And the 8 legs can be seen as 8 parts of the witch's year. There are 8 festivals of the witch's year. The spider has 8 legs, which is like spiders. And there are others, of course, because so many of the creatures have been fitted into mythology. You see, once you get into the world of Halloween, the world of Samhain, the world of change, then everything that is becomes part of you. Saying is that all that is there in the collective unconscious, that we have forgotten that's part of us because we are human creatures, this also comes out at Samhain, at Halloween.
There you go. This whole subconscious and darkness. Now, clearly, I mean, when you meet a lot of Christians or people who see paganism as bad, and the ironies are a lot because, of course, Christianity literally absorbed paganism, pagan beliefs, pagan traditions. It literally comes from the Roman Empire that had their pantheons of God and paganism. We literally worship celebrities today as if they're a pantheon of gods. I really believe that a lot of people today in the elites think they are gods, that they have the blood of the gods, that they are godlike. So I just find it all so hypocritical, and everyone is so disconnected from the planet. These people lived with the flow of the planet. You want to go with the flow? These people were going with the flow, but they were also doing things, trying to influence. They were seeing the symbols everywhere. And they were obviously intelligent enough and smart enough to build structures that lined up to the summer solstice or the equinox. Take Stonehenge. They made rituals out of this. They were not these ignorant, stupid people. We always like to present these more tribal, ancient cultures as stupid, but there's no way that they're stupid. They have a wisdom that and in touch with a supernatural world that we just literally disregard. And I don't even know if once you learn how to read and write and you're so logical, I think it makes it harder. I have that theory that it makes it harder to be in touch with the supernatural world. I'm not telling anyone not to learn to read and write. It's certainly very useful, but there's a shift in the way you think and the way your brain operates. And these people are operating in a very, I don't want to say primal way, but in a very connected way with the land and how the land moves. They could probably look at the sky and the astrology and the stars and know exactly what's happening, and maybe even get a sense and a hint of weather and how it's going to be. You see Farmer's Almanac and stuff like that. You call it magic, but it's just a different intelligence, and it's just a different way of viewing the world. All right. So we don't have too much depth. I'm going to pop over here. We've got a couple more clips from him, but I want to pop over because I've got a couple of clips that talk about the sacrificial stuff and the different stuff with paganism. So let's do free move. We'll free move it here. And then I like to do this free move thing where we put me over here. And then we're going to put me over here. I'll pop up my radius. There we go. There we go. Now we're going to share some stuff. We're going to go over to TikTok and look at some content about first the origin of Halloween, and then we're going to look at a video on Druid sacrificial practices. Here we go.
Celtic lands, as the sun dipped below the horizon on the eve of November 1st, a magical veil unfolded, blurring the boundary between the realms of the living and the dead. The Celts believed that spirits, both benevolent and malevolent, walked among them during this enchanting time. To safeguard against the mischief of spectral visitors and to honor their ancestors, the people lit grand bonfires, wore animal hide costumes, and disguising themselves as spirits to blend with the otherworldly beings. Offerings of food and gifts were laid out to appease these ethereal guests, seeking their favor and protection. With the advent of Christianity, the ancient Samhain merged with All Saints' Day, transforming the night before into All Hallows' Eve, now known as Halloween. The essence of crossing the veil remained, entwining the past and the present, connecting us to our ancient roots, and embracing the mystical allure of this spirited holiday. Long ago...
And I think that's why it's endured. Of course, we know that the Irish bring their practices and their habits over when they came over to North America, and that is one of the reasons why we celebrate and we have Halloween still today. Let's hear what Miss Jonas has to say. Many of the people who were prosecutors, witches, were actually healers, midwives, dentists. Yeah, they probably identified as Christians too, and they were just herbalists and people who were trying to used the skills and the knowledge that they had about medicine and healing to help people. And maybe someone got jealous. Maybe it didn't work and someone died. It wasn't their fault, but they got accused out of people's rage and anger. That's a really good point. And at one time, a lot of women who were making beer, they were making money. They were brewers. They were making beer and ciders and stuff like that. They had started this business and they were making lots of money. And some of the men around got really envious. They wanted to take over and hijack their business. They started calling these brewing women witches. Yeah, and got rid of them and then just took over the market. And I kid you not, this is the dirty stuff that happens. This is the dirty stuff that happens. It's evil play and evil play that happens to this day. That is very disturbing. Oh, we're actually going to we'll look at a clip of, we're going to look at a clip soon. We're going to go back. I'm pretty sure there's clips of people saying and priests saying how evil it is. So people will tell you that Satanists kidnap people and sacrifice them on their day. I'm sure that stuff like that happens, but that has nothing to do with pagans and druids. That has to do with psychopaths and mentally ill people today that are just crazy. Like absolutely crazy. So here's them talking about druids used as human sacrifices for prophecy and offerings, stuff like that.
Celtic priests burned people alive in giant wicker cages to predict the future? In 50 BCE, Julius Caesar witnessed horrifying rituals deep in the sacred oak groves of Gaul. The Druids believed human blood was the only way to speak with their gods. They built massive wicker structures shaped like men, then stuffed them with living prisoners. As flames consumed the victims, Druids chanted and read prophecies from the screams. But burning wasn't their only method. They drowned people in sacred pools and cut open stomachs to read the future in spilling entrails. Prisoners of war, criminals, and even volunteers seeking honor became sacrifices. Caesar described one ceremony where dozens burned simultaneously while priests danced around the flames. The political power of these rituals terrified Rome. When Romans conquered Britain, they specifically hunted down every Druid. In 60 CE, they cornered the last priests on Anglesey Island. Not one survived the massacre. The age of human sacrifice in Celtic lands died with them. Did you know?
Okay, so how many of you think that was propaganda or accurate? I know they probably did some sacrifices, but how many of you think that Caesar might have spread some propaganda? I don't know. You tell me, because I think there might have been some sacrifices going, but I wonder how much of that was propaganda to fuel, slaughtering them. I have to wonder when it comes to the Roman Empire. We have a comment here. For the Romans, the word pagan originally meant someone from the fields, equals someone uneducated, which later meant uneducated in the ways of Christ. Heathen is the Germanic language equivalent. So basically, a non-Christian, it morphed into, it's not someone in the fields. It's basically like calling someone a hillbilly. And now people are owning it. And then Renee says, if you look into Bathory closely, you can see that accusers were just greedy. Yeah, they were. They were greedy men who behave very unchristian-like, how they're supposed to behave. So, let's see if we can go back here. Okay, so we're going to see if we can find some stuff on people going, no, it's Christians. The bog bodies. Why Celts sacrifice twins. Okay, let's check this one out. This looks a little interesting.
If I were in your position, I'd want to burn the world down.
Okay, that's not what I thought it was going to be. Oh, that's because it wasn't the one I clicked.
If I were in your position.
There it is.
DNA tests revealed the unthinkable. Each body had an identical twin. Celts believed such people carried two souls, but the truth is even darker. Stone statues here always depicted twins. Edinburgh Uni research confirms it was no accident. Victims were carefully paired. Why? The answer lies in an inscription on the sacrificial knife. This word means benefit. According to Dr. Forsyth, Uni of Glasgow, Druids believed twin blood granted visions of the future. Edinburgh Museum has hidden this artifact for 5 years, but we have proof. What was in their stomachs? Revealing in next movie.
Okay. So I'm not sure exactly how accurate that is, but people have found bodies in bogs that look like they were sacrificed. And I can see them being, twins were probably exceptionally rare in those days, so I could see them being superstitious about it, or believing that, believing that they offered something special. Jonaside says, I'm a pagan but haven't been called a Satanist in a long while. And then he adds, a little bit of both, but Caesar definitely exaggerated what he saw. Yeah, I think he exaggerated what he saw. And remember, there was probably sacrifice going on, but then he also wants to take over this land. He has a... I mean, they're literally expanding and taking over everywhere. So, of course, they want to villainize people as much as they possibly can. So, we're going to do one more video where this guy talks about the satanic origins of Halloween, as if, there's no satanic stuff with Christianity. Christians don't do bad things. Christians didn't burn people. Romans didn't sacrifice people. Everyone here is all innocent. We're not, we don't, Christian nationalists don't do anything crazy or insane. They're just all innocent, la la la. But let's check this one out.
Before descending down this narrow gap into the woods below, you will come across this...
Okay, that's not the right one.
Calendar.
There it is.
The highest, the most sacred of all nights of human sacrifice is that of Samhain. Now, the nights of Samhain are observed from October 29th through the 31st. October 29th is the first day of Samhain, and the second day of Samhain, and it wraps up on what you would call Halloween, the third night of Samhain. Now, Samhain is the Celtic lord of the dead. He is depicted as a stag god. He always has been depicted as a stag god. This is just...
Okay, pagans out there, correct this guy if he's wrong.
How they practice in the occult. Now, this is one of the very few remaining reliefs of the stag god that is still out in the...
I don't think the stag god was called Samhain. I'm pretty sure it has a different name. The Bible Truth, this is Bible Truth 777. They don't even spell Christian TikTok right, and it's hard to take this guy seriously. Probably, I don't know, let's keep listening to what he has to say. It's gonna get weird.
Open for anyone to see. This one is in the British Isles, and this one in particular, this would be the stag god, but he's also known as Cernunnos. Okay, that's one of the Celtic names for Samhain. Now, one of the statues of Samhain is, as I said, depicted as a stag god. You notice the antlers and everything.
I'm not sure what he's getting at. Oh, it's got horns. Yeah, he's just like, everything he's saying is so dumb. He's literally projecting. He's trying to say, look at all these horns. The devil has horns. Do you think maybe, buddy, that the Christian church villainized their God and gave Satan horns to correspond with that? Do you think maybe that's a little propaganda? Yeah, he's like, I'm like, Samhain is the holiday. It's not a god. This guy has no idea what he's talking about. I was like, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Samhain wasn't the name of a god. Okay, let's keep listening to this.
Now, the stag god of the occult world, as has already been pointed out, is nothing else but Nimrod. Nimrod was...
See, I mean, you can only believe this if you don't understand Kyrinos is the horn god. He's seen this as Nimrod, a devil. This is all Christian propaganda. Because he's too stupid to understand that they're literally talking about like a stag, like they're literally referencing things in nature that they're connected with. And this is what happens to retarded people who have no perspective of nature. I don't like, they have no perspective of how connection with nature, how they're celebrating nature, and they had a different perspective. It's so bizarre. So bizarre. I mean, let's listen to a little bit more. It's 9 minutes long. We're not going to listen to that long because I can't stand, I don't want to listen to his lisp for 9 minutes.
Eventually depicted as a god that had one horn, like Moloch. Some depicted him as having
I thought Moloch was an owl, bro. Make up your mind.
Antlers like this stag here. This is just one of those ancient representations of the stag god. Now, during the nights of Samhain, and the Nights of Samhain came about.
See that? He says the Nights of Samhain, but Samhain's a god. Is it a celebration or a god? Like I don't think he knows what he's talking about.
Because of an ancient nomadic people known as the Celts. Now the Celtic people came into the British Isles and throughout Ireland, Scotland, that entire region, around 900 BC, and basically held all sway and authority in those regions till up and around 900 AD. So almost 2,000 years there, they were in control of that region of the world. Now, the Celtic people, these warrior nomadic people, had a priestly class like just any other major culture you can think of. Their priestly class was known as the Druids. Now, from the Gaelic, Druid means men of oak. This is why the oak tree is still the most sacred tree in the Illuminati world. And it is the same oak that you will find the Illuminati owl at the Bohemian Grove is made out of. That is a 40-foot oak Illuminati owl. Now, the Druids literally held all sway and authority in the Celtic tribe. Because they were priests, they were exempt from going to war.
Okay, so we're going to stop that. I don't know where he's going with this. He's the sacrifice, that stuff. I get that. I get that's where he wants to go. And here he says, the Celtics went from northern Italy to the British Isle, from Germany to Spain. Yeah, they were all over Europe. You know, it wasn't like it was just in the British Isle. And of course, there's probably a multitude of different traditions and things that they did. So who knows? You see, Christians, they kind of take some of the facts and then they string them in their own storyline of how they want things to have been, and they get all offended. Like Wicca is one of the newest religions. It's the most British religion. It's a modern religion, and people get offended by it. But this is the history of the United Kingdom. It's in their past. So we're gonna go and have a look at, now that we heard all that bibble babble about Guy Fawkes and how they incorporated Guy Fawkes into the whole thing.
Not only making its web, which is mysterious enough, but it's a world of change than ever.
He was executed for high treason with Guy Fawkes in huge bonfire.
Is two things. It is a destruction and it is a sacrifice. And the sacrifices are making sacred, from what sacred facere, I suppose, the Latin. It is a making sacred. So you're making sacred that which you burn, which is the last year. This figure is the whole of the last year. So you're making it sacred. At the same time, you are also destroying what has been bad. And the British were sufficiently ingenious to pretend it was all about Guy Fawkes.
In Ireland.
There we go. And Jonathan makes a really good point. is we actually know very little about the Druids because they killed them all. And Celtics didn't write anything down. It was an oral tradition. A lot of those cultures were oral. And like I said, he killed them all. And I don't think they killed them all because of sacrifice. I think they wanted to get rid of all the leaders. This is something you do when you go to take over. You get rid of anyone who's in your way, the wise, the leader, people who hold your traditions. So then you just have the young women left and you can engineer them how you want. That's how it goes. And nobody, the Christians are doing this because they've been taught the whole dynamics of heaven and hell, and you're going to go to heaven or you're going to go to hell. And that's why they've done this. Are you guys coming in here like the hounds of hell starting a fight? Mr. Peter, yeah, you're coming in here? Oh, Petey would like to be on the podcast tonight, so he's come to say hi. Oh, you want to talk? Oh, sweetie, you got to go down. There you go. He was like, I want a podcast. Poor Petey. So yeah, that's this dynamic, and I have at least I had a video. We're being raided. We're being raided by the Romans, the Roman dogs. They have had enough of my podcasting this week. All right, boys, settle down. Settle down. Simmer down. Maxie, simmer down. Okay? I'm just going to calm them down a little bit. Yeah, it's okay. You guys are okay. So anyways, we've got this heaven and hell creation that the church creates, and it turns everything upside down for the Celtic world, because that wasn't it. Death was a transition and a gateway, and you could come back. Now it's, hey, you better do what we say or you're going to go to this hellish place. And it reviews that in that documentary that I gave you the link to. I thought I had a clip of them talking about that, but I don't know. I don't know that I do. Yeah, we did Guy Fawkes. And of course, Guy Fawkes is one of those celebrations that's done on the 4th of November. And of course, he was originally a Catholic trying to blow up Parliament in protest. But they kind of transferred him into that kind of burning people, burning the old, bringing in the new, kind of like the Druids did. Back in the day, they sort of transitioned and used that as an effigy as opposed to putting people in a wicker cage. Quite nice of them, but it still is that kind of representation. It's a much, much milder form of the tradition. We tend to not like to burn people today, but like I said, there's still sacrifices happening. That's for the conspiracy theory on another night, though. Let's talk about Halloween as divination, communication. We're going to play a clip of that, and then I might play some clips of Matthew Lee Embleton's tarot deck, part of divination. And I've got a deck right here. They're your classic Rider-Waite. I actually have some books by them as well that it's out of print that you can't get anymore. But we're going to check that out. It's a few minutes long, so hold tight and listen up. This is the last clip from Robin Skelton. I encourage you to check out the full documentary and read my article on him. I've linked them in the live chat.
It's a time of prophecy, too, of course. Well, this is because, you see, if you once step between life and death, you have a touch of something that could happen in the future. The dead maybe know this. They move to a different plane. So maybe they'll tell you.
In Scotland and Wales, every family built a large bonfire.
You're going to marry. This usually applies.
Threw it into the dying embers. Next morning, if a stone was missing or had been disturbed, its owner would not live to see another Halloween.
But there are countless other ones, like looking in a mirror and seeing behind you the face of the person you're going to marry. This usually applies only to women. Then you can peel an apple and throw the apples over your shoulder, the apple thing over your shoulder, and it will spell out the person you're going to marry.
Nuts were also used to predict the nut.
One must recognize at this time the spirit.
One could also divine the future Halloween night directly from the fairies. In Scotland, if you sat on a three-legged stool at the meeting of three roads, You could learn the names of those fated to die during that year, for that was where the fairies gathered and whispered the names.
One must recognize at this time the spirits of everything. And the spirits of everything are fairies, are goblins, are elves. These are creatures that are the forces and the powers of the earth. We've got to recognize them too. The food, but the creature. These are very important in a rural setting. And you have to do things for them. Some Halloween celebrations, some Samhain celebrations involve feeding them, of course. So you feed them, you welcome them, you accept them. It's a great time of acceptance. So if you're going to accept the ghosts, accept the beasts, accept the birds, accept all the goblins and fairies, the little folk, the people you can't always see. People might scare you if you did see them, I don't know. It's an acceptance of the whole world.
The trick part.
Oh yeah, they get in the trick part. But I forgot to upload a clip of it, but one of the most prominent things, and they're talking about the divination. Now, I myself wouldn't peel an apple and throw the peels behind to tell me who my husband was going to be. That wouldn't be my way of doing it, but hey, it's interesting. And we still have a lot of these traditions with us. Like, you'll see people kind of have those superstitions about how to tell who you're going to marry or what gender the baby's going to be. Some people do it with a needle or a ring or a pendulum, throwing salt over your shoulder, looking at, coals and or runes or things and trying to read them, tea leaves, divining from that, tarot cards. There's different ways. Now you see people doing remote viewing, which is not really, I don't know if it's divining. It's a form of divination. It's feels a lot more scientific in nature, but it's still a form of divination in that way. But one of the prime things that changed, and I think changed humans, wasn't really the fact that they adapted all the saints and that they adapted their culture, because those things still went on. It wasn't that they adapted and incorporated the pagan cultures into their culture, into the Roman sort of pantheon of gods, and merged them and tried to take over. It was when the Christian church created the concept of damnation and heaven and hell. It's such a contrasting concept with how Druids or, your Celts and your Celtic pagans saw the world. And as I said this before, that shatters the whole idea of being in touch with the planet. You're one with the world. There is another world, layered on top that you can communicate with at certain times of the year. It's very close. You're with your ancestors. You can transition into that world. There's a gateway. It's not a damnation. It's not to necessarily be feared, although they probably did believe that there were some negative spirits that you had to be aware of. You can fill me in on that if you want in the chat, any kind of information like that. But they didn't have this concept of up and down. You go to heaven if you're good for a God, or you go to hell down there where you're damned and tortured and burned alive forever. A lot of their processes, even sacrifice was done as a clearing and a cleansing. I'm not promoting the sacrifice. I'm just explaining their logic. But they probably believed that those people, they were clearing those people out and they would come back as something else. That was the belief. And Renee adds that many modern pagan holidays are on fixed dates, but it was done by cosmic correlations in those days, so it would fluctuate. That makes sense. And what's really funny about a lot of the Bible? So it's written by people who would have been influenced by paganism, by a multi-god culture. They would have been in Rome. A lot of it is astrology, astronomy. A lot of it, the stuff they're talking about in the Bible, they're talking about celestial happenings. Don't tell hardcore Christians that. Don't tell hardcore Christians all the pagan stuff and all the rituals and divination they do within their own rituals and pagany stuff. They'll call you, I don't know what they'll call you, but they won't like that at all. Okay, so we have this whole idea of Halloween. So I don't know about you, but I never saw it as like some evil thing. I saw it as fun. We got to dress up in costume, and maybe there could be wicked costumes. I always chose to dress up as something dark and wicked, even when I was a kid, whether it was, whatever it was, when I got to choose, But it's this time where you break free from the normal, and you get to have a little fun and dress up and do, usher in, it's cold, things are dying, you get to still do some movement and some motion, usher some good things in. Usher some energy in. They're going to be slaughtering the livestock, and probably they'll have big feasts with that meat, and they'll have drinking and merriment, trying to keep the light around. That's the pumpkins and turnips sometime. So Renee says she's going to add this about paganism. This year, the Samhain actually is on the November 6th. I will start my craft starting on October the 6th. Okay, so it's interesting. It actually is fluctuating with the cycles, whereas we have fixed dates because the calendar is part of the system. It's part of the system that controls everything. But hey, I get it. They want people doing things at the same time. You have to have business meetings. You have to meet at the same time. You got to have some consistency. I get it. It's effective. It's a useful tool. I understand. So speaking of divination and talking to your loved ones or the spirits or the gods or goddesses, I don't know. Let's take a look here. I'm giving a big promotion for Matthew's tarot videos and his book. I encourage people to check him out on TikTok. He's MLE author. And he has a massive series on tarot. So he's got tarot and magic, divination, the tarot deck, esotericism in tarot, esotericism, like it is fantastic. So he's got a whole series, a whole bunch of videos that you guys can watch. Let's see what he says about tarot and magic, part 1.
Choose a deck that resonates with you. There are countless tarot decks, each with their own artwork, style and energy. The traditional Rider-Waite-Smith deck is a popular choice for beginners because it has very clear symbolism, but do explore other decks to find one that resonates with your personal aesthetic and intuition. Some decks are designed around specific themes such as nature, mythology or astrology, etc., so choose one that aligns with your interests. The right deck will feel like it clicks with you, even if you're just drawn to the artwork or imagery. Practice daily. Draw one card a day, reflect on its meaning and how it might relate to your current situation or mindset. You don't need to do a full reading, just spend a few minutes connecting with the card and noting any feelings or thoughts it inspires.
So there you go. I will put his link in the live chat. You guys can check him out. That's MLE Author on TikTok, and you can check out all his videos, check out his books. He's got books that go beyond tarot. So I always like to give people who show up to my show a call out. So that is Matthew Lee Ambleton, author and musician, and he's got his new series on the tarot. And let's just look at his book. This one is talking about the book on it. So let's just check that one out, if it will load. Well,
okay, so this is a flick through the book Tarot. It starts with the origins in Chinese playing cards, Middle Eastern playing cards, and they're spread across the Mediterranean into medieval Europe, and then the early tarot decks, Visconti Sforza, Mantegna, Solabusca, Minchiate, and Tarot de Marseille. And then the influx of esotericism, ancient knowledge and symbols, and how that was brought into tarot, and the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And then is a card-by-card analysis of the whole deck, starting with the major arcana, and then the minor arcana, looking at wands, cups, swords and pentacles, and then all about divination, from one-card readings through different spreads that you can use for divination, up to the Celtic cross, and then some information on using tarot cards in magic, and some general advice. Lots of lovely images. I hope you enjoy it.
So there you go. I hope you guys go over and support Matthew in his book and subscribe to his TikTok channel. All right. So I'll go back to this scene here. Pirate shipping. Good to see you. Yeah, check out MLE Author. He's far more well researched than I am. I do a lot of research, but my mind's all over the place doing 500 things all at once. And I think he's a lot more centered and focused on me. Than me. He's a lot more focused than I ever am on research. So I think you're going to get a lot of in-depth concepts with whatever books you choose to read or purchase of his. So that is the show, you guys. Now, I don't know what y'all all doing for Halloween. I'm probably going to decorate. I love handing out candy to the little kids now. They're just so cute. And we get quite a few here because we got quite a few kids in the area. So it's really nice. I don't know. Maybe I'll dress up as a gypsy. We won't have a show on Tuesday. We're going to have a show. I'm going to be painting one of my other spare rooms, turning it into a little gym. And so I'm going to need that day to do it. I am a guest on a podcast called The Waiting Room. It's pre-recorded. I'm doing that Tuesday night, so I'll let you know when that comes out. Please show up to next Thursday's show, 9 p.m. Eastern. Dan and Ava from Vamp Chat are coming on to talk vampires. They run that podcast. They are also both authors of the vampire fiction genre. And Dan has been a long-time radio broadcaster, so listening to him is very wonderful. He's much more professional than I am. So there you are. Next Thursday, I will be here live at 9 p.m. Eastern. And remember, this whole thing about Halloween, I wanted to do it now at the beginning so people could check it out. I didn't want to do it just before Halloween. The month is here. The time is coming up. As we get closer to the end of October, you'll probably feel it more intensely. Go for a walk in nature. Be out there with the leaves. Renee is talking about in terms, they go with this sort of cosmic correlations. It's sort of coming November 6th. So if you're in England and you're doing Guy Fawkes, I want to hear your stories. It's the energy is going to still be intense. And then right into Christmas, you still have this intenseness. The British, especially in Victorian times, love to tell ghost stories and spooky stuff even at Christmas time. It was a big celebration. We don't do it anymore. Maybe we'll do that on this show at Christmas time. We'll tell Christmas ghost stories, and I'll drink some wine. I have wine at Christmas time and wine on my birthday. I've limited myself. That's it. 2 times a year. And maybe we'll do that. So next Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern, I also want to show you guys Robin Skelton, who was talking on those video clips. This is the book. I've shown it before. He wrote it with Jean Kozakari. This is literally their book of when they went into haunted houses all throughout Victoria, British Columbia, and exorcised them of spirits. So all these Christians saying they're evil and demonic, they literally clear spaces for positivity. And it's called A Witch's Book of Ghosts and Exorcism. And this is Craig Derrick Castle on the cover. It's a castle that was built in Victoria. Sorry, England, we can't compete with you. I know, I got it. But it's a nice castle. I've been to it many times to tour it. Really, really great, really beautiful place. And it's an excellent book. And I think it's out of print, but you might be able to get a used copy on eBay or something like that. But it's got a whole bunch of their clientele and how they went into houses. And when was it written? When was this first written? Let me have a look here. because I'm sure some of these cases are probably from like the 70s and 80s that they've been collecting. I have his book. He also has the book Spellcraft, which I have. Robin Skelton also had a book called Talismanic Magic and the Practice of Witchcraft Today. So if you can get those, this book was written in 1990. So I'm betting you these stories of them clearing houses were probably from the 70s and 80s, stuff that they had collected over the years. Fantastic book. Love it. It is so good. And so I hope everybody is gearing up, having a great Halloween. We have a whole bunch of great guests. Join us with Dan and Ava next Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be cool. And by the way, Dan has interviewed Dacre Stoker. That's Bram Stoker's nephew. So I might try to ask him hey, give me a link so I can get him on so we can all see and ask him our questions. I'm going to shoot for it. We'll see. We'll ask him. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. That is the general ABCs of the history of Halloween. I obviously didn't cover every pagan culture, but feel free to leave some more information in the comments that I missed out or anything that you feel that's important about this sort of Celtic, pagan, druidic history from the United Kingdom, because that, of course, is where we focused on. So I will see you on Thursday, guys. Cheers. And have a great evening.
Step into the shadows with Velvet Bite as we unearth the mystic and ancient origins of Halloween.